Your passenger count is wrong.
What did you say?
The system shows every child checked in.
It counted the bracelet, not the boy. The boy you spoke to is missing.
Security will check the passenger areas. You should not enter restricted areas.
I know the service routes. He came this way.
Can they stop that door?
Nia, tell me exactly what you know.
I think the compass followed Oliver. 30 feet back, gray door, behind the linen carts.
Keep moving. Tell me what you find.
What did he hear?
Tell him not to open it.
Your passenger count is wrong. Nia Bennett did not shout the words, but they cut through the emergency command center like a blade through silence. Grant Whitmore turned from the glowing navigation display and stared at the young waitress standing 10 feet away, soaked from rain blown across an exterior passage, one hand gripping the edge of steel table. In her other hand was a blue child passenger wristband. Outside, the Superstorm swallowed the Atlantic in darkness. Wind hammered the Aurora crown. Waves rose beyond the windows like moving walls, and somewhere deep inside the luxury cruise ship, machinery groaned beneath the strain. Emergency lights painted the room in dim red. Officers spoke rapidly into radios. Screens flickered between deck maps and passenger counts. The main electrical system had failed 7 minutes earlier, leaving backup generators to carry critical operations. Nearly 4,000 passengers and crew were being directed toward designated muster stations. And according to the computer, every child assigned to Nia's section had been accounted for. Nia knew better. Grant stepped toward her. At 42, the billionaire CEO of Whitmore Oceanic had built a reputation on control. Ships followed schedules. Crews followed procedures. Problems became numbers, and numbers became decisions. Tonight, the ocean seemed determined to challenge every rule he trusted. "What did you say?" he asked. Nia placed the blue wristband on the table between them. "A child is missing." Grant glanced at the band, then toward the operations officer beside him. "The passenger system shows all minors from Deck 7 checked in." "The system counted the bracelet," Nia said. "I'm talking about the boy." The room seemed to tighten around those words. Another wave struck the ship, making a suspended light sway several inches. Grant steadied himself against the table. Nia barely moved. "Who?" he asked. "Oliver Hayes, 8 years old. Table 17 at dinner." An officer checked the manifest. "Oliver Hayes. Muster Station C, status green." Nia shook her head. "His mother is at Station C. Oliver is not." "How do you know?" Grant asked. Nia looked directly at him. "Because I spoke to his mother. She thought he was with me." The officer frowned. "Why would she think that?" "Because I was helping him earlier." Grant's eyes dropped to the wristband. "Where did you find this?" Nia hesitated for half a second, not because she was uncertain, but because she understood what her answer meant. She pointed toward the deck map, near the crew stairwell leading below Deck 7. A radio crackled. Somewhere else on the ship, another team reported a locked access door. The storm roared against the hull. Grant looked toward his security chief. "Send someone." "Search teams are already handling 2 passenger separation reports," the officer replied. "And emergency zoning is closing several lower access corridors until engineering confirms conditions." Nia's expression changed. "How long until those doors lock?" "Some already have." Grant looked back at her. "You need to return to your muster station." Nia did not move. "Mr. Whitmore, that boy asked me tonight how crew members find their way through parts of the ship passengers never see. And I showed him which doors were crew access and told him never to go through them." Grant stared at her. The implication arrived before either of them said it aloud. Children remembered warnings. Sometimes they also remembered exactly where those warnings pointed. Thunder rolled across the ocean. The lights flickered once, twice. Then the command center dropped into darkness for 3 long seconds before the red emergency glow returned. Nia picked up the wristband. Grant watched her eyes move toward the stairwell symbol on the map. "Where do you think he went?" he asked. Nia's voice lowered. "Below deck." Grant looked at the storm data, the closing corridors, and the green status beside Oliver's name. For the first time that night, the most sophisticated passenger system on his billion-dollar ship suddenly looked dangerously incomplete. Nia stepped closer to the map. "Your computer says the bracelet is safe," she said. "I need to know whether the child is." Before we continue, if you enjoy unforgettable stories about ordinary people facing extraordinary moments, subscribe to Hidden Tables. Every story reminds us that true character is revealed through courage, compassion, and the choices we make when no one is watching. Now, let's see what happens next. 4 hours earlier, the Aurora Crown had seemed too magnificent to fail. Golden light spilled across the Grand Atlantic dining room while a pianist played beneath a crystal chandelier, and beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, the ocean stretched beneath a fading blue horizon. Nearly 600 guests filled the room. Servers moved between white linen tables carrying polished silverware, sparkling water, and carefully arranged dinners. At the center of that floating world was Grant Whitmore. He did not need an introduction. People recognized him before he reached their tables. Investors stood to shake his hand. Guests raised phones for photographs. Senior officers greeted him by name. Grant had launched Whitmore Oceanic 12 years earlier with one ship and an idea everyone called impossible. Now his company operated luxury vessels across 3 continents, and the Aurora Crown was his masterpiece. Tonight was supposed to celebrate its first anniversary. Grant moved through the dining room with the calm confidence of a man walking through something built from his own decisions. 20 feet away, Nia Bennett moved through the same room, carrying water. Almost nobody noticed her. A guest handed her an empty glass without breaking conversation. Another asked for fresh silverware without looking up. One man called her Miss because he had never bothered reading the name tag he had been facing for nearly an hour. Nia did not take it personally. She had learned that service work could make a person strangely visible and invisible at the same time. Guests noticed when their coffee was late. They rarely noticed the person remembering how they took it. Nia remembered anyway. Table 11 wanted lemon. Table 14 had a shellfish allergy. Table 17 had an 8-year-old boy who had asked more questions in 30 minutes than most adults asked during an entire voyage. His name was Oliver Hayes. "Do you know where everything is on this ship?" Oliver asked when Nia brought his apple juice. His mother, Rachel, smiled apologetically. "He has been studying the deck map since we boarded." Nia smiled. "Not everything, but I know enough to get through a dinner shift without getting lost." Oliver held up a small brass-colored toy compass. "I did not get lost. That is what people say right before they get lost." Oliver laughed. Across the room, Grant passed their table with 2 executives. Oliver watched him. "Is that the man who owns the ship?" Rachel nodded. Nia glanced toward Grant. "His company owns it." Oliver considered that distinction seriously. "Does that mean he knows every hallway?" Nia almost laughed. "I doubt anyone knows every hallway." Grant happened to hear the last sentence as he passed. He stopped and looked toward them. "I would like to think I know most of them." Oliver brightened. "Even the ones downstairs where the crew goes." Rachel immediately touched her son's shoulder. "Oliver." Grant smiled politely. "Some areas are for crew only for a reason." Then one of the executives drew his attention away, and within seconds Grant was moving again. Oliver watched him disappear into the crowd. He did not answer. Nia lowered her voice. "Powerful people are very good at answering the question they wish you asked." Rachel covered a laugh with her napkin. Nia returned to work. 20 minutes later, the ship moved beneath an unexpectedly strong swell. Water glasses trembled. The chandelier shifted slightly. Conversation paused, then resumed. Nia looked toward the windows. The horizon had changed. Dark clouds were gathering faster than they had been an hour earlier. Crew members began securing items near the service stations. A supervisor quietly told the staff that weather conditions were worsening and outdoor decks would soon close. Grant received a message from the bridge, read it, and continued speaking with his guests. Systems were working. Officers were monitoring the storm. There was no reason for alarm. Nia carried another tray toward table 17 and noticed Oliver staring down at his empty hands. "What happened to your compass?" she asked. His face fell. "I think I left it near the observation lounge." Rachel sighed. "It can wait until morning." Oliver looked toward the dining room entrance. Nia saw that look, the quick calculation children made when adults told them no and curiosity whispered maybe. She leaned closer. "Promise me you will stay here." Oliver nodded. Nia held his gaze another second before her supervisor called from across the room. "Nia, table 6. She turned away. Outside the windows, the first flash of lightning illuminated the horizon. When Nia looked back less than a minute later, Oliver's chair was empty. For 1 second, Nia thought Rachel had taken Oliver somewhere. Then she saw Rachel still seated, speaking to another guest while reaching automatically toward the empty chair beside her. Nia crossed the room. "Where is Oliver?" Rachel turned and frowned. "I thought he was asking you about the observation lounge." Nia felt something cold settle beneath her ribs. "He was here less than a minute ago." Rachel stood immediately. Oliver, nearby guests, looked over. Nia scanned the dining room entrance. No blue shirt, no curious face. "No te campes." She moved toward the corridor, but her supervisor intercepted her. "Nia, table 6 has been waiting. A child just left the dining room alone. His mother can handle it. She does not know where he went." The supervisor glanced toward Rachel, then toward the crowded tables. "Tell security. We have 600 people in here." Nia stared at him. 600 people. That was exactly why one small boy could disappear so easily. She hurried to the nearest service phone and contacted guest security. Oliver's description went out quietly to nearby crew stations. Nobody wanted to alarm the dining room. Rachel joined Nia near the entrance, twisting her napkin between both hands. "He probably went for that compass." "That is what I think. The observation lounge is 1 deck up." Nia nodded, but something bothered her. Oliver had not simply asked where the lounge was. Earlier, he had asked about crew hallways, about downstairs, about places passengers did not normally see. A crew announcement interrupted her thoughts. Outdoor decks were closing immediately. The captain requested that passengers remain indoors while the ship adjusted course around rapidly worsening weather. The windows flashed white again. This time, thunder followed close enough to silence several conversations. Across the room, Grant Whitmore stood beside the captain's hospitality liaison, reading another message from the bridge. His expression had changed. The polished confidence remained, but now it had something underneath it. Calculation. Nia approached him before her supervisor could stop her. "Mr. Whitmore." Grant turned. Recognition took a second. "Table 17. The boy you spoke to is missing." Grant's attention sharpened. "Missing?" "Security is checking the observation lounge." Rachel stepped forward. "He went looking for a toy compass. I should have gone with him." Grant shook his head. "Do not blame yourself. We will find him." The words sounded reassuring because Grant was accustomed to making reassurance sound like certainty. Then the ship rolled more noticeably beneath them. Several glasses slid across the table before servers caught them. The pianist stopped playing. Grant looked toward a nearby officer. "How close is the storm?" "Closer than forecast. The bridge is preparing additional precautions." Nia looked down the corridor. 2 security officers appeared, but Oliver was not with them. One shook his head. "Observation lounge is clear." Rachel's face lost color. "Then where's my son?" Nia forced herself to think. Oliver had one of the compass. If it was not in the lounge, perhaps he had retraced his steps. "Where were you before dinner?" she asked. Rachel blinked. "Promenade deck, then the central atrium. We stopped near the aft elevators because Oliver wanted to look at the ship model." Nia knew that area. Passenger elevators on one side, a crew access door on the other. She had passed through it dozens of times carrying supplies. Did he have a compass there? Rachel closed her eyes, searching her memory. "I think so." "No, wait." He dropped something near the model. Another announcement sounded. The captain asked all guests to proceed calmly toward their assigned muster stations as a precaution. Conversation erupted around them. Chairs moved. Crew members began directing people toward exits. Grant immediately shifted into command mode, instructing senior staff to support passenger flow. Nia should have returned to her station. Instead, she looked at Rachel. "Stay with the crew. I am checking the atrium route." Grant heard her. "Security will check it. They are searching passenger areas. And you are responsible for your station." Nia met his eyes. Oliver does not know the difference between a passenger hallway and a crew hallway. Before Grant could answer, every light in the dining room went out. The chandelier vanished. The windows became black mirrors. Someone gasped. Then emergency lights flickered on, washing the room in red. Deep beneath their feet, the steady vibration of the engines changed. Grant looked toward the ceiling as his radio came alive with overlapping voices. Nia looked toward the dark corridor. Somewhere beyond it, a child was still missing. The darkness lasted only 4 seconds, but 4 seconds was enough to change the room. When the red emergency lights came alive, the Grand Atlantic dining room no longer looked luxurious. It looked unfamiliar. Guests stood between tables, crew members raised flashlights, and the windows reflected hundreds of anxious faces back into the room. The familiar vibration beneath the floor had weakened. Grant Whitmore pressed a radio to his ear. "Bridge, give me status." Static answered first. Then a voice broke through. "Main electrical distribution interrupted. Backup power is active. Propulsion response is limited while engineering isolates the fault. Muster procedure continues." Grant looked toward the crowd. "Keep everyone moving calmly." Nia was already heading toward the corridor. "Nia." She stopped and turned. Grant pointed toward the gathering passengers. "Your station needs you. Oliver needs somebody too. Security knows he is missing. Security is searching a ship that just lost power." Grant's jaw tightened. "That is exactly why you should not wander into restricted areas." Nia took one step toward him. "I'm not wandering. I know the service routes." Rachel appeared behind them, struggling to keep her voice steady. "Please, if she knows where he might have gone, let her. Help." Another crew member guided Rachel toward Muster Station C. Nia watched her disappear into the moving crowd, then looked back at Grant. For a moment, neither spoke. Authority had always worked quickly for Grant. He gave an instruction. People followed it. But Nia was not challenging him for pride. She was challenging the assumption behind the instruction. Grant's radio crackled again. Security to Whitmore. Observation lounge, central atrium, and passenger stairwells checked. No visual on Oliver Hayes. Nia closed her eyes for half a second. Think, not where an adult would go. Where would Oliver go? The compass, the ship model, the aft elevators. She turned toward the corridor, the atrium. Grant followed several steps behind, accompanied by Security Chief Marcus Hale. The ship rolled gently beneath them as they entered the central atrium. Emergency lights glowed along the floor. Passengers moved toward muster stations under crew direction. Nia went directly to the decorative ship model near the aft elevators. She crouched beside its base. Nothing. She checked beneath a bench. Nothing. Marcus spoke into his radio. "We need teams covering decks 6 through 8. Nia stood and looked toward the crew access door. A small green emergency indicator glowed above it. "That door leads to the service stairwell," she said. Marcus nodded. "Crew only. Oliver asked me about crew hallways." Grant looked at her. "You think he went through there?" "I think he was curious enough to try." Marcus tested the door. It opened. Beyond it, a narrow stairwell descended beneath red emergency lighting. Grant immediately raised his radio. "Send a search team here." Nia stepped closer to the doorway, but did not enter. There are 3 service levels below this point. The first connects to housekeeping storage. The second connects to food service preparation. The third reaches maintenance corridors. Marcus gave her a surprised look. "You know all 3? I work on this ship. We do not teleport dinner upstairs." Even Grant almost smiled, but the moment vanished when another announcement sounded. Emergency zoning procedures were beginning on lower decks. Certain access points would be restricted until engineering completed safety checks. Nia stared down the stairwell. If those doors close, search teams will have fewer routes. Marcus nodded. They can coordinate access with the bridge. That takes time. It also keeps people from entering areas they should not. Nia knew he was right. She also knew procedure could become dangerous when everyone assumed someone else had already noticed the exception. A security officer arrived and started down the stairs with a flashlight. Grant remained beside Nia. "You stay here." She did not argue this time. She watched the officer disappear below. 10 seconds passed. 20. Then Nia noticed something near the bottom edge of the doorway, half hidden beneath the metal frame. She bent down and pulled it free. A small brass-colored toy compass rested in her palm. Grant stared at it. Marcus stopped speaking into his radio. Nia looked down the red-lit stairwell. He came this way. Then a heavy mechanical sound echoed from somewhere below. One emergency access door had begun to close. The mechanical door descended slowly, its warning light pulsing amber above the frame. Marcus Hale raised his radio. "Hold lower access at stairwell 7. We have a possible child route." Static answered. Then the security officer already below called back. "I am through the first landing. Door is closing behind me." Nia tightened her fingers around Oliver's toy compass. Grant looked from the narrowing opening to Marcus. "Can you stop it?" "Not locally once emergency zoning engages. The bridge can override individual doors after engineering clears the section." "How long?" Marcus hesitated. "I do not know." Grant disliked those 4 words more than almost anything. His entire business had been built around reducing uncertainty. Tonight, uncertainty seemed to be waiting behind every door. Nia stepped toward the stairwell. "Where does the officer think Oliver went?" Marcus spoke into his radio. The answer came through broken static. "No sign on the first service level. Moving toward housekeeping storage." Nia looked at the compass again. "Then he probably kept going." Grant frowned. "Why?" "Because if Oliver dropped this here, he was already focused on something else." "You cannot know that." "No, but I know he wanted this badly enough to leave dinner for it. If he found it and dropped it again, something changed." Grant studied her. Nia was not pretending certainty. That was what made him listen. She was separating what she knew from what she suspected. The door reached halfway closed. Marcus ordered a second security officer to take an alternate route from Deck 6. Nia shook her head. "That route passes through the main galley." "Correct. It will be crowded with staff moving to assigned emergency positions." Marcus looked at her. "What do you suggest?" She pointed toward another corridor. "Housekeeping service elevator lobby. There is a narrow crew stair beside it. It connects to the second service level without crossing the galley." Grant glanced at the digital deck map on a wall screen. "That stair is not showing. Because passengers do not need it. This is an operational map. Then it is missing a route." Marcus checked his tablet. After several seconds, he nodded. "She is right. Crew access stair E4." Grant looked at Nia differently. Not with admiration yet. With attention. There was a difference. "How many other routes do you know that are not on that screen?" he asked. "Enough to know the screen is not the ship." The door continued downward. Marcus dispatched the second officer towards stair E4. Grant's radio suddenly carried the voice of the captain. "Mr. Whitmore, we need you in the command center. Engineering is reporting unstable power distribution, and the storm track has shifted again." Grant looked toward the atrium, where crew members were still guiding passengers beneath emergency lighting. His place was with the officers making decisions for thousands of people. He knew that. Nia knew it too. "Go," she said. "Security has the route." Grant looked at the compass in her hand. "And you?" "I'm going to muster station C." "Good." Nia did not explain that she was going there, because she needed to ask Rachel one more question. They separated. Grant headed toward the command center with Marcus, while Nia moved against the controlled flow of crew. Toward Station C. She found Rachel near the front, staring at every doorway. "Did you find him?" "Not yet." "Rachel, think carefully. Before dinner, did Oliver mention anything below deck?" Rachel pressed both hands together. He kept asking about how the ship worked. Elevators, kitchens, engines. Normal kid questions. Did anyone answer him? Rachel suddenly looked up. A crew member near the ship model told him there was a viewing window where passengers could sometimes see part of the machinery. Nia's stomach tightened. "Where?" "I do not know. I told Oliver we were late for dinner." Nia turned toward a nearby deck diagram. There There was no public machinery viewing window on the Aurora Crown, but there had once been one during early promotional tours near a service corridor on the second lower level. It was no longer part of the passenger route. Nia reached for a crew radio. Before she could speak, the ship's lights flickered again. Far below, the security officer's voice broke through the static. "I found a blue passenger wristband." Nia froze. The compass was still in her hand. The wristband from the command center had been found later near another access point. Now there was another blue band below. Grant's voice came over the radio from the command center. "Nia, tell me exactly what you know." "The officer found another blue wristband," Grant said through the radio. Nia stared at the deck diagram while Rachel stood beside her, pale beneath the emergency lights. "Then it is not Oliver's." Silence answered her. Grant's voice returned. "Explain." Nia lifted the compass in her hand. Oliver's wristband was already found near the upper access point. If security found another identical band below, we are following the wrong clue. Marcus Hale spoke from the command center. "Blue bands identify children assigned to Muster Station C. There could be dozens." "Exactly," Nia said. Rachel looked at her desperately. "Then how do we know where Oliver went?" Nia forced herself to ignore the storm shaking the windows and remember dinner. Oliver asking about hallways. Oliver asking how the ship worked. Oliver staring at the model. The crew member mentioning machinery. The compass disappearing. Pieces were not answers until they formed a direction. "The old viewing area," Nia said. Grant responded immediately. "Where is it?" "Second lower service level, aft section. It was used during promotional tours before the ship entered regular service." Marcus checked his tablet. "I do not see a passenger viewing area there." "Because it was closed." "How do you know about it?" "Staff orientation. They showed us old passenger routes, so we would understand why some service doors still have directional markings behind them." Grant looked across the command center at the digital ship plan. Minutes earlier, he had trusted that map more than the waitress speaking through his radio. Now the map seemed to contain a different kind of blindness. It showed what the ship was designed to be used for. Nia knew how people actually moved through it. "Can security reach that section?" Grant asked. Marcus studied the emergency zones. Not through the direct aft passage. Engineering restricted it while they stabilize electrical distribution. Nia traced another route on the diagram at Muster Station C. There's a linen transfer corridor from housekeeping. Marcus checked. That connects one level above. Then take stair E4 down and cross through dry storage. Marcus paused. That route works. Grant picked up his radio. "Redirect the second search officer." Nia interrupted. "He will miss the turn." Grant's expression tightened. "Why?" "Because dry storage has two identical service exits. The left one returns toward the galley. The right one reaches the old tour corridor, but the sign is behind a supply rack." Marcus stared at the map again. "That detail is not here." Nia almost laughed, but Rachel was watching her, and nothing about the moment was funny. "I told you, the screen is not the ship." Grant heard the sentence differently this time. For hours earlier, he had walked through the Aurora Crown believing ownership meant understanding. He knew its cost, capacity, propulsion specifications, passenger numbers, and quarterly revenue. Nia knew which doors stuck during humid weather, which service stair saved 3 minutes during dinner rush, which corridor became crowded when housekeeping changed shifts. Knowledge did not always come from the bridge. Sometimes it came from carrying plates through the same hallway 500 times. The security officer reached dry storage. "I have 2 exits." Nia raised the radio. "Move the supply rack beside the right-hand door. There should be an old blue arrow underneath." Several seconds passed. "Found it." Rachel covered her mouth. Grant said nothing. The officer continued through. Then static swallowed the radio. The storm pressed harder against the ship, and emergency lights dimmed for a heartbeat. Marcus looked toward Grant. "Engineering wants the lower aft section sealed within minutes." Grant's eyes hardened. "Not until that corridor is checked. Captain has final authority on safety zoning." "Then tell him why we need time." At Muster Station C, Nia heard Rachel whisper, "Please find him." Nia looked at the compass. Something about it still bothered her. Oliver had gone looking for this. Yet it had been found near the first stairwell, before the route to the old viewing area. If he dropped it there, why would he continue downward? She turned the small compass over. A thin piece of white thread was caught in its hinge. Nia recognized it immediately. Housekeeping laundry bags used the same white drawstring. Oliver had not simply dropped the compass near the stairs. Someone, or something, had moved it after he passed through housekeeping. Nia lifted the radio. "Grant, stop the search officer." "Why?" "Because we have been assuming Oliver followed the compass." She stared at the service map as another possibility formed. "I think the compass followed Oliver." "Stop the officer," Nia repeated. Grant did not ask her to explain twice. "Marcus, hold the search." In the lower corridor, the officer stopped beside the old tour passage while static hissed through his radio. At Muster Station C, Nia held Oliver's compass beneath the red emergency light. The white thread trapped in its hinge was thin, almost invisible. Rachel stared at it. "What does that mean?" "Housekeeping carts use laundry bags tied with this kind of cord." Nia looked toward the service map. If Oliver dropped the compass inside housekeeping, it could have caught on a bag or cart and been carried back toward the stairwell. "We found the compass where it ended up, not necessarily where Oliver went." Grant's voice came through the radio. "Then where did he go?" Nia closed her eyes and reconstructed the route. Oliver leaves dinner. He searches near the atrium. He sees the crew door. He remembers the old viewing area. He goes downstairs. Somewhere near housekeeping, he loses the compass. A moving cart carries it away. Oliver keeps walking. But which direction? "Rachel," Nia said, "does Oliver avoid anything when he gets nervous? Loud noises? Crowds? Dark spaces?" Rachel swallowed. "He hates elevators when they stop suddenly. We were stuck in one for 20 minutes last year. Since then, he always chooses stairs." Nia turned toward the diagram. "Then he would not have taken a service elevator." Marcus answered immediately. "That leaves 2 stair routes." "Not tonight," Nia said. "One passes beside the galley. During dinner service, it would have been loud and crowded. Oliver was somewhere he knew he was not supposed to be. He would avoid people." Grant understood. "The quieter stair." "Yes. E4. Marcus checked the lower plan. "That leads toward dry storage and the old tour corridor." The route they had nearly abandoned. Grant looked across the command center as the ship shifted beneath another heavy swell. "Resume the search." The officer moved forward. Nia listened to every footstep through the radio. 20 yards. A turn. Another door. Then static. "I have the old blue arrows," the officer reported. "Following them aft." Rachel gripped Nia's arm. "Is he there?" "We do not know yet." Those words mattered. Nia would not give a frightened mother false certainty simply because hope sounded kinder. A crew supervisor approached. "Nia, Station C needs additional staff. You have to return to passenger support." Nia looked at him. "Security is using my directions. Security can handle it now." Grant heard the exchange over the open radio. For several seconds, he said nothing. Then his voice filled the channel. "She stays on communication." The supervisor blinked. "Sir, Nia knows the service routes. Keep her on the search channel." The supervisor stepped back. Rachel looked at Nia, but Nia was listening to something else. The security officer had stopped moving. "What happened?" Marcus asked. "Temporary maintenance barrier ahead. Corridor beyond is dark." Nia's eyes narrowed. "What kind of barrier?" "Portable folding gate. Sign says access closed." She remembered seeing maintenance staff near that section 2 days earlier. A ventilation inspection. The passenger maps would never show it. "There should be another route through linen storage," she said. Marcus checked. "Not on my map." Grant almost smiled despite the tension. "I think we have established what the map does not know." Nia gave directions from memory. "Turn back 30 feet. Gray door. Narrow passage behind stacked linen carts." The officer found it exactly where she said. Then the radio went quiet again. 5 seconds. 10. 15. The ship's emergency lights dimmed. Somewhere above them, thunder rolled across the Atlantic. Finally, the officer whispered, "I hear something." Rachel stopped breathing. Grant leaned toward the command console. Nia raised the radio closer. "What?" 3 knocks. Maybe from behind the next service door. Nobody spoke. Then came 3 faint knocks again through the officer's microphone. Nia looked at Rachel. Grant looked at Marcus. A sealed lower corridor stood between a search officer and an unknown sound, while engineering was still waiting to close the section. For the first time, Grant did not issue the next order. Nia, he said, what do you think? Before we continue, if you enjoy stories where the most overlooked people reveal the greatest strength, subscribe to Hidden Tables. Here, every story reminds us that courage, integrity, and kindness can come from the most unexpected places. Now, let's see what happened next. Tell him not to open that door yet, Nia said. The security officer froze with one hand near the release. Grant leaned toward the radio. You heard her. Hold position. Marcus Hale looked at him. Earlier, Grant would have demanded an explanation first. Now he waited for Nia to give one. Why, he asked. Nia studied the service diagram. Because that door separates the old tour corridor from a restricted utility passage. If emergency zoning has already engaged, opening it without checking the other side could trigger another automatic closure behind him. Marcus checked the control status. She is right. The aft zone is partially isolated. Grant looked toward the ship schematic. Can the bridge confirm the next compartment? Not completely. We lost several local sensors when the main distribution failed. Nia raised her radio. Officer, can you hear the knocking now? Silence. Then 3 faint taps came through. Rachel pressed both hands against her mouth. The officer answered yes, definitely behind the door. Nia crouched beside the muster station diagram, thinking. She had passed that corridor during orientation. There was another entrance, but not from the same deck. Marcus, stair E4 continues down one more level, correct? Yes, but that section is restricted. There is an adjacent crew passage that comes back up behind the utility corridor. Marcus checked another schematic. I see it. Grant looked toward him. Can a team use it? Only with engineering clearance. Grant immediately contacted the bridge. Get clearance. The captain's reply arrived moments later. Grant, conditions are changing. We cannot send more people into lower restricted areas without a controlled route. Then give us a controlled route. Engineering needs someone who knows the service layout to guide them. Grant looked toward the radio as if Nia were standing directly in front of him. Nia, can you describe it? She hesitated. I can describe most of it, but there is a temporary maintenance closure near linen transfer. I do not know how they redirected access. Marcus checked his tablet. Nothing. Grant exhaled. Another blind spot. Who would know? Nia looked toward the crew gathered at Muster Station C. Housekeeping, food service, cabin attendants. People passengers passed every day without learning their names. Housekeeping supervisor, she said. Within a minute, an older crew member named Elena Ruiz was beside her. Nia showed her the route. Elena nodded. Immediately, maintenance moved the passage last week. You go through supply room B, then use the narrow stair behind the linen press. Marcus heard her over the radio. That is not on the emergency map. Elena gave Nia a tired look. Of course it is not. Grant heard that too. The ship he owned contained entire layers of knowledge that never reached the screens in his command center. Marcus, Grant said, assemble a controlled search team. Security and engineering together. Nia added, Elena should stay on radio with them. Grant paused. Agreed. Rachel looked at Nia. What about you? Before Nia could answer, the officer below spoke urgently. The knocking stopped. Rachel's face tightened. Nia raised the radio. Oliver, if you can hear me, this is Nia from dinner. Make any sound you can. Nothing. The storm rolled beneath them. Grant listened from the command center. Then, very faintly, the officer's microphone captured a scrape. One tap. A pause. 2 more. Rachel whispered, that is him. Nia did not promise what she could not know. It could be. Grant's radio crackled with the captain's voice. Control team has clearance for the alternate route. 10 minutes maximum before engineering reassesses the zone. Marcus looked at Grant. We can send them now. Grant answered without hesitation. Do it. Then Nia spoke. Wait. Everyone stopped again. She stared at the old deck diagram, remembering something Oliver had said at dinner. Does that mean he knows every hallway? Nia looked at the route behind the sealed door and suddenly understood why the boy might not be answering normally. Grant, ask the officer what is written on that door. A moment later came the reply. Emergency machinery access. Authorized crew only. Nia's eyes moved to the next compartment. That is not where the old viewing window was. Grant straightened. Then what is making this sound? Nia looked toward the dark lower decks beneath their feet. I do not know, but if Oliver followed the old tour arrows, we may still be one corridor away from him. Then we stop chasing sounds and start chasing Oliver, Nia said. Grant looked across the command center at Marcus Hale. Redirect the control team to the old tour route. Marcus hesitated. That means leaving the officer at the machinery door. Keep him there, Nia said. If the sound changes, he reports it. Nobody opens anything until engineering confirms what is behind it. Grant repeated the instruction without changing a word. Minutes earlier, Nia had needed permission to remain on the radio. Now, the billionaire who owned the ship was transmitting her judgment through his command structure. The Storm had not changed their titles. It had changed which kind of knowledge mattered. Elena Ruiz guided the search team from Muster Station C, while Nia stood beside her, tracing the route with one finger. Supply room B, Elena said. Then the narrow stare. A security officer answered through static. Entering now. Nia listened to footsteps, breathing, and the distant mechanical hum of backup systems. Rachel stood close enough to hear every word. Grant remained in the command center, one hand resting on the table as another swell rolled beneath the Aurora crown. We are at the lower landing, the officer reported. 2 passages. Nia, picture the corridor. Do you see faded blue arrows? 1 points left. Do not follow it yet. Marcus frowned. Why not? The promotional route was reversed before the viewing area closed. Some arrows were never removed. Elena nodded. She's right. Left goes toward the old exit. Right goes deeper into the tour path. Grant stared at the digital map. The screen showed neither arrow. Take the right passage, he ordered. The team moved. 20 feet. 40. Then the officer stopped. Temporary barrier. Nia asked, what color? Yellow. Elena shook her head. Maintenance barrier. It should have a side opening for crew. The officer found it. Beyond the barrier, the corridor narrowed. The radio signal weakened. Then a new voice interrupted from bridge. Mr. Whitmore, engineering recommends sealing the aft service zone within 6 minutes. Backup distribution is fluctuating. Grant looked at Marcus. Can we extend? Not without increasing operational uncertainty. Grant hated the phrase, but this time he did not argue with reality. Nia, 6 minutes. She already meant, not a threat, not authority, a limit. Then tell them to keep moving, Rachel whispered. What if 6 minutes is not enough? Nia looked at her. Then we make every minute useful. The search team reached another junction. One corridor led toward machinery access. The other climbed slightly toward the former viewing section. Nia directed them upward. A flashlight swept across old wall panels. Then the officer said, I found something. Rachel grabbed Nia's hand. What? Grant asked. Small handprint on the glass. Silence. The old viewing window. Nia's heart accelerated. Fresh. Hard to tell. There is condensation. Anything else? The flashlight moved. A paper dinner napkin on the floor. Rachel recognized it immediately. He had one in his pocket. He folded it into a boat at dinner. Grant closed his eyes for half a second. Finally, something connected Oliver himself to the route. Not a wristband shared by dozens of children. Not a compass moved by a laundry cart. Something personal. Continue, Grant said. The team passed the viewing window. Ahead, the corridor split again. One route returned toward passenger decks. The other descended toward a service transfer area. The officer's radio crackled. I hear a voice. Rachel stopped breathing. Nia raised her radio. Oliver, static, then something faint, too weak to understand. Grant leaned toward the speaker. Can you confirm it as a child? Not yet. The bridge interrupted again. 5 minutes to zone reassessment. Nia stared at the diagram. The voice seemed to be coming from the descending corridor, but that route would take the team farther from the safe return path. Grant knew it too. Nia, he said quietly. If we send them down, we may have to pull them back almost immediately. She looked at Rachel, then at the toy compass still resting in her palm. All night, systems had offered answers that looked certain until a human detail proved them incomplete. Now, there was finally a voice in the darkness, but no guarantee whose voice it was. Nia lifted the radio. Ask one question only Oliver would answer. Ask him what he called the napkin at dinner, Nia said. Rachel understood. Immediately, she leaned toward the radio. Oliver, if you can hear me, what did you make with your napkin? Static filled the channel. The search team waited in the descending corridor. Grant stood motionless in the command center, watching the seconds disappear from the engineering countdown. Then a faint voice came through. A sailboat. Rachel closed her eyes. That is him. Nia gripped the radio. Oliver, stay where you are. Security is coming to you. His answer was weak, but clear enough. Okay. Grant turned toward Marcus. Send them down. For minutes until reassessment. They have confirmed the child. Marcus transmitted the order. The search team descended carefully while Nia guided them from memory. The passage curved behind an old storage area before reaching a service transfer compartment. Emergency lights were operating there, but only intermittently. Oliver, the officer called. Keep talking to us. The boy answered from somewhere beyond the next turn. Rachel pressed a hand against her chest. Nia stayed focused. Hearing him changed everything emotionally, but it changed nothing about the need for caution. Ask what he sees, she said. The officer relayed the question. Oliver answered a red light and a door with a wheel. Elena Ruiz looked at Nia. That sounds like the old transfer vestibule. Nia nodded. There are 2 doors there. Marcus checked his schematic. One returns toward the tour corridor. The other leads into a restricted utility section. Grant's expression tightened. Which side is Oliver on? Nobody knew. The officer reached the vestibule. I see the red light. One door ahead is closed. Can you hear him? Nia asked. The officer listened. Yes. Behind it. Rachel whispered his name. Grant looked at the countdown. 3 minutes. Open it. Marcus raised a hand. Wait. We need engineering confirmation. If that door is part of the active zoning boundary, opening it could change the protected route. Grant stopped. Earlier that evening, he might have forced a decision because delay felt like weakness. Now he understood that urgency and recklessness were not the same thing. Engineering identified that door. Several seconds passed. The answer came back incomplete. The local sensor was unavailable, and the door designation on the digital schematic did not match the faded physical markings reported by the officer. Nia stared at the map. Again, the screen and the ship disagreed. Officer, describe the wheel, she said. Red center. Silver outer ring. Elena shook her head. That is not the utility door. How do you know? Grant asked. Utility access wheels were replaced last year. They're solid red now. Nia leaned toward the radio. Then Oliver is behind the older transfer door. Marcus checked maintenance records. Confirmed. The replacement list shows the utility door upgraded 11 months ago. Grant exhaled. Could they open the transfer door safely? Engineering answered after another tense pause. Yes, if they keep the return passage clear. Grant gave the order. The officer turned the wheel. Metal shifted slowly. Rachel squeezed Nia's hand as the radio carried the sound of the door opening. Then came the officer's voice. I have visual contact with Oliver. Rachel made a small sound of relief, but Nia did not celebrate yet. Can he walk? She asked. Yes. He is frightened, but responsive. Grant looked at the countdown. 2 minutes. Bring him back the same way. The officer paused. Problem. The door behind us just changed status. Amber warning light. Marcus turned toward engineering. What? Automatic zoning sequence. The return corridor may restrict before they reach it. Grant stared at the deck map. The child had been found, but finding him and bringing him back were suddenly 2 different problems. Alternate route? He asked. Marcus searched the schematic. Nothing approved from that compartment. Nia looked at Elena. Elena looked back at her. Both women remembered the same thing at once. A service passage used before the ship's renovation, one that no longer appeared on the current emergency map. Grant heard the silence. Nia? She raised the radio slowly. There may be another way out. The old passage begins behind the transfer compartment, Nia said. Grant leaned toward the radio. How certain are you? Certain it existed before the renovation. Not certain it is still open. Marcus Hale pulled up archived deck plans while Elena Ruiz traced the route from memory. The search officer remained with Oliver behind the transfer door, watching the amber warning light above the return corridor. Engineering says we have less than 2 minutes before that section changes status, Marcus said. Grant looked at the current schematic, then at the archive plan appearing beside it. 2 versions of the same ship. 2 different realities. Where does the old passage lead? Toward a housekeeping transfer stair, Nia answered. If it was not sealed during renovation, it should reconnect 1 level above the restricted zone. The officer spoke through static. I see no second door. Nia pictured the compartment from orientation. White walls, storage cabinets, old directional markings painted over during refurbishment. Look behind the storage shelving on the starboard side. A pause. Shelving is bolted down. Elena stepped closer to Nia. Not all of it. The end section was movable because housekeeping used to access a utility panel. Nia transmitted the detail. The officer checked. She's right. End section moves. Grant watched Marcus as the archive plan revealed a narrow line behind the compartment. There, Marcus said. Old service passage. The officer shifted the shelving enough to expose a gray door. Oliver's frightened voice came faintly through the radio. Are we going back to my mom? Rachel heard him and stepped toward the speaker. Nia gently handed her the radio. Oliver, this is Mom. You stay with the officer. Do exactly what he says. I am sorry. Rachel closed her eyes. We will talk about that later. Right now, just stay close to him. Grant looked away for a moment. Thousands of passengers were numbers on operational screens tonight, but one child's voice had reduced every calculation to something painfully simple. Someone was waiting for him. Gray door is locked, the officer reported. Marcus checked the archive. Mechanical latch, not electronic. There should be a release lever inside the utility recess, Elena said. The officer found it. The door opened into darkness. Passage is clear for about 30 feet. Then it turns. Engineering interrupted. Return corridor is now restricted. Do not attempt the original route. Grant's jaw tightened. The choice had disappeared. The forgotten passage was no longer an alternative. It was the only available path currently cleared for evaluation. Can engineering verify the upper exit? Grant asked. Not remotely. Marcus shook his head. We need someone at the other end. Nia immediately looked toward Elena. Housekeeping stair from deck 6. Elena nodded. I can get security there. Grant heard them. Nia, stay where you are. I am staying at muster station C. Send a security officer to deck 6, and I will guide him by radio. Grant paused, then nodded even though she could not see him. Do it. There was no argument now. No reminder that she was supposed to be serving passengers. Grant had finally learned the difference between protecting authority and using it. Security reached the upper housekeeping stair. Nia guided the officer to an unmarked door behind a linen staging area. I found it, he reported. Can you open it? Trying now. Below, Oliver and the first officer waited inside the forgotten passage. Above, another officer worked the old latch. Between them were years of renovations, outdated maps, emergency systems, and 30 feet of corridor nobody in the command center had remembered existed. Then a metallic click came through the radio. Upper door is open. Rachel covered her face with both hands. Grant did not celebrate. Not yet. Bring them through. Footsteps echoed through the channel. The lower officer guided Oliver into the passage while the upper officer called toward them. 20 feet. 15. 10. Then the ship shifted beneath another powerful swell. The radio dissolved into static. Every voice vanished. Rachel stared at Nia. Grant grabbed his radio. Search team, respond. Nothing. 5 seconds passed. Then 10. Nia's eyes remained fixed on the deck diagram. Somewhere inside a forgotten corridor, Oliver was finally moving towards safety, but nobody could hear him anymore. Search team, respond, Grant repeated. Static. Nothing more. At muster station C, Rachel stared at Nia as if the answer might somehow be visible on her face. Nia refused to invent one. The radio signal may be blocked inside the old passage, she said. That corridor runs behind reinforced service walls. Elena Ruiz Nadiv. Reception was always poor there. Rachel whispered, so they could still be moving? Yes. Nia kept her voice steady. We just cannot hear them. Grant heard that through the command channel. He looked at Marcus Hale. Can the upper officer see into the passage? Marcus contacted him through a separate channel. This time an answer came. Negative. Passage turns before my position. I called out. No response yet. Grant's hand tightened around the radio. For years, he had measured risk in percentages, schedules, insurance exposure, and engineering margins. None of those numbers could tell him what was happening 30 feet inside a forgotten corridor. Then Nia noticed something on the archive plan. Grant, ask engineering whether ventilation is still active in that passage. Marcus checked. Why? Because if the old corridor shares ventilation with the housekeeping stair, sound might carry toward the upper access. Engineering confirmed the duct connection still existed. Nia turned to Rachel. Oliver answered your voice before. Try again from the upper doorway. Security brought Rachel to a protected position near the Deck 6 housekeeping area, while crew continued managing the muster station. Grant remained connected by radio. At the open service door, Rachel called into the passage. Oliver, it is Mom. If you hear me, answer me. Silence. She tried again. A second passed, then another. Finally, from somewhere beyond the turn, a small voice answered. Mom. Rachel's knees nearly gave way, but Nia caught her arm. Keep talking. Rachel called again. The upper security officer leaned into the doorway. I hear movement. Grant closed his eyes briefly. Marcus exhaled beside him. Moments later, the first officer appeared around the corridor bend with Oliver beside him. Rachel stepped forward as security guided the boy through the upper doorway. She wrapped her arms around him and held him close. Oliver immediately began apologizing. Rachel shook her head. You are here. That is enough right now. Nia stood several feet away, still holding the toy compass. Oliver noticed it. You found it. Nia smiled for the first time in what felt like hours. It took the long way back. She placed it in his hand. Grant heard the confirmation from Marcus. Oliver Hayes is accounted for. Search team clear. The green status beside Oliver's name had been there almost the entire night. Now, for the first time, it actually meant something. But Grant did not feel relief alone. He felt anger at how easily the system had mistaken a scanned wristband for a verified child. The storm had not created that weakness. It had exposed it. By morning, the worst weather had moved east, and the Aurora Crown was operating steadily on restored systems, while engineers completed inspections. No celebration followed. Instead, Grant called an emergency review with bridge officers, security, engineering, hospitality, and frontline department supervisors. Nia was invited too. She arrived expecting to stand near the wall. Grant pointed to an empty chair at the table. Seat. A security analyst displayed the timeline. Oliver's wristband had been scanned during early muster preparation when Rachel carried both family bands together with their travel documents. The system recorded the identifier. Nobody visually confirmed the child standing beside her. So the software worked as designed, one executive said. Grant looked at him. Then the design failed. Silence settled over the room. Nia watched him carefully. Grant turned toward her. What else did we miss? She thought about the invisible stair, the outdated arrows, the maintenance barrier, Elena's knowledge, the route absent from emergency screens. You had data, she said, but the people who knew the ship were not part of the data. Grant leaned back. Explain. Security knew protocol. Engineering knew systems. The bridge knew operations. But housekeeping knew the move passage. I knew the service stairs. Elena knew the old access door. None of that knowledge reached the same place until a child disappeared. Grant looked around the table. The most expensive ship in his fleet had nearly been defeated by information trapped inside job titles. Then we changed that, he said. Nia held his gaze. Changing a procedure is easy. Grant waited. Changing who gets listened to is harder. Grant did not answer immediately. Around the conference table sat people who had spent their careers being heard the moment they entered a room. Nia had spent hers learning that being useful did not guarantee being noticed. Then we start with who gets listened to, Grant said. He turned toward the security analyst. Passenger accountability changes today. A scanned wristband will never again count as visual confirmation during an emergency muster. Every miner gets verified by a crew member. He looked toward engineering. Every temporary maintenance closure goes into the emergency operations system before the work begins. Then housekeeping and frontline departments will review service route maps with security every month. If someone moves a cart, closes a passage, changes a stairwell, or discovers something the official map does not show, command needs to know. One executive shifted in his chair. That creates a significant reporting burden. Grant looked at him. So did searching for a child our system said was already safe. Nobody argued. Nia watched him carefully. She had seen powerful people become generous after being frightened. Generosity was easy when emotion was fresh. Change was harder because change survived after everyone stopped feeling afraid. Grant seemed to understand that. Nia, he said, what did we miss? She looked around the table. People. Grant waited. Not passengers. Not crew counts. People. Your system knew where everyone was supposed to be. It did not know who was actually there. And when something went wrong, the people who knew the small details had to fight to be heard by the people with authority. Marcus Hale lowered his eyes toward the table. Elena Ruiz nodded once. Grant asked, what would you change? Nia had expected gratitude. She had not expected the question. I would put frontline employees into emergency planning before emergencies happen. Housekeeping sees spaces security rarely enters. Servers notice families and children. Maintenance knows which doors are actually being used. Cabin attendants know who needs extra help. You cannot wait until something goes wrong and then discover who knows what. Grant leaned back slowly. The answer was obvious now, which made the old structure harder to defend. Do it, he told Marcus. Build the program with them, not for them. 2 days later, when the Aurora Crown reached port, passengers stepped onto the terminal beneath clear morning skies. Rachel and Oliver waited near the gangway. Oliver carried his toy compass carefully in both hands. When he saw Nia, he ran toward her, then stopped as though remembering he was supposed to behave. I'm never going through a crew door again, he announced. Nia smiled. That is the smartest thing you have said all week. Rachel hugged Nia and whispered a simple thank you. No cameras surrounded them. No applause followed. The moment did not need either. Grant stood several yards away with senior officers. He could have remained there. Instead, he walked over. Oliver looked up at him. Do you know every hallway now? Grant remembered the question from dinner. This time, he did not offer the polished answer. No, he said, and I finally understand why that matters. Oliver considered this, then pointed toward Nia. She knows more than you. Grant smiled. About some things, absolutely. Nia raised an eyebrow. That sounded painful. I am learning. Weeks later, Whitmore Oceanic introduced new emergency verification procedures across its fleet. Frontline workers joined safety reviews. Service route changes were added to command maps. Department knowledge became part of emergency planning instead of something discovered during a crisis. Nia did not become an executive overnight, and Grant did not pretend one storm had transformed him into a different man. Real change was quieter than that. It appeared in meetings where someone once ignored was now asked to speak. It appeared in procedures rewritten because a waitress noticed what software missed. It appeared when authority learned that listening was not surrendering power. It was using power responsibly. Grant had owned the ship. He had commanded the room. But when certainty disappeared and titles became useless against the unknown, Nia had carried something money could not purchase. Attention, memory, courage, and the willingness to see one frightened child when everyone else saw a green mark on a screen. The storm did not decide who mattered. It simply stripped away the illusion that status ever had. If this story stayed with you, subscribe to Hidden Table and join a community that believes true character is revealed not by power or status, but by courage, integrity, and kindness. Thank you for watching, and until next time, we'll save you a seat at the hidden tables.